upon arrival, shortly after, the man handed himself into police and was taken into custody.
It's a prime location for four-wheel driving and campers, but unfortunately the beach between Redhead and Blacksmiths is also a popular place for illegal dumping.
Anything from lounges to gazebos, syringes, nappies, so it's not just the young people that are doing it.
The constant eyesore prompted 18-year-old Jared Johnson to start a Facebook page, organising cleanups after New Year's Eve celebrations and now the Australia Day long weekend. Around 30 people joined today's initiative, including Council, the Belmont Wetlands State Park Trust and the New South Wales Four-Wheel Drive Association.
As four-wheel drivers, we're often perceived as people that are out there to destroy the bush. Actually, at heart, we're all environmentalists.
But the issue is not just isolated to Lake Macquarie. Shocking footage emerged yesterday of an illegal dumping hotspot at Taro.
I think there's a number of factors. One is the cost of tipping fees. That's a factor. I think also people are plain lazy and sometimes people aren't educated.
In Lake Macquarie, general mixed waste is $305 per tonne, with extra charges for special waste, while in Newcastle it's $230 per tonne. Some councils also offer biannual free pickups of household waste.
In the end, it's everyone's responsibility to pick up the rubbish that they bring down. If you can bring it down, why can't you take it home?
Renee Feder, NBN News. This $4 million machine is the newest addition to the MARTA, which when operational will assist in delivering a pioneering cancer treatment. The hospital has been using similar technology to perform stereotactic radiotherapy for the past year, which directs a very high dose of radiation to tumours in the lung.
Well, the aim is to provide local control so that the patient doesn't have uncontrolled cancer growing in their lungs, and also has the potential to prolong the survival of that patient.
This new treatment is the focus of a clinical trial launched by Newcastle's Trans-Tasman Radiation Oncology Group. Saffron 2 will investigate its effectiveness on people with secondary lung cancer, meaning the disease started elsewhere in the body.
What we're defining is, does a patient need one visit or whether they need four visits for the treatment.
Researchers are aiming to recruit around 100 patients to study over the next 3 years.
Hopefully we'll be able to participate in the study in a couple of weeks. This study is rolling out across many sites in Australia and New Zealand over the next few weeks as well.
Renee Feder, NBN News.
We do expect a 20% increase at Christmas, and we have hit that target, which is unfortunate, and it's making it really challenging for our foster carers because pretty much everyone is at capacity, which means we do get to a point where we just have to say no.
Day one at the Auckland Nines and the Knights were keen to impress. A sweeping backline move almost bared fruit. But it was the Dragons who drew first blood from a play which started deep inside their own half to score a 5-point try. It didn't take long before the Knights hit back, a Jared Mullen kick and chase providing opportunity for his winger. Mullen had the ball on a string, this time supplying service down the right as the Knights took a 1-point lead into the break. Newcastle kept the momentum in the second half by keeping tactics which worked. Soon after, the flying winger had it all to do, and he did it easy. As the Knights went on to win 18-7, Game 2 against Parramatta started similar to the first. That try sparked the Red and Blues into action, Nathan Ross finishing with inches to spare. The game swung back down the other end as the Eels halfback found a gap to exploit. Down 11-4, things got even worse for Newcastle in the second half. Desperate to stay in touch, a 5-pointer was the perfect tonic. On a roll, Tyrone Roberts was conducting the play. A short ball levelled up proceedings. But with seconds to go, the Blue and Golds couldn't be denied. Michael Kane, NBN News.
Watching and hoping for a miracle. At this spot at 6 this morning, a 22-year-old man from San Remo on the Central Coast was rock fishing with 2 friends. While he was moving between these ledges with no life jacket or helmet, he slipped and fell into the water. His friends raced to get life rings, but he didn't resurface.
At this stage, we have been unable to locate the young male, and due to the length of time, it is unlikely that we will at this stage.
Surf lifesavers, the Westpac helicopter, police and ambulance personnel all joined the search. Police divers also arrived to assist, but the surf conditions were so bad they couldn't enter the water.
There was a high swell this morning. It was very windy and it was very dangerous. I believe there was a warning right along the coast warning all rock fishermen that it was very dangerous.
Despite the obvious risks, rock fishermen continue to visit this notorious spot. In less than 5 years, 13 people have tragically lost their lives. Emergency services will monitor the site tomorrow, while divers will search once conditions are safe. Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
We weren't offered a redundancy package, no notice, no anything. So we're just, left out on the street, jobless. No help offered for resumes.
This election is about the energy choices that New South Wales will make. The Greens are saying it's time to ditch the old technologies, get rid of coal and gas, bring down household power bills.
Nothing was going to stop Kurt Fearnley in the first ever men's wheelchair mile, the Paralympian showing all his experience. Fearnley fell back into fourth as a lead pack quickly formed, but when the field entered the home straight, he made his move, just edging out George. A quality field assembled for the men's 1500 and the pace was on from the start. Some of the field went with the pacemaker, but by the final lap it was Victoria's Jeff Risley out in front, and that's where he stayed. In the women's 400, Commonwealth Games rep Caitlin Sargent made a flying start, but was mowed down by Morgan Mitchell. Earlier, Queensland's Robbie Crowther soared to a new long jump meet record, jumping 8.03 metres, to take an easy win over the ACT's Angus Field. Meanwhile, Commonwealth Games gold medalist Eleanor Patterson failed to clear 1.94 metres in the high jump, but her backup of 1.88 was more than enough to seal the victory. Samuel Jordan, NBN News.
A funding announcement at Wallsend, $20,000 from council coffers for a new baseball field.
It's really important as the Lord Mayor now to make sure that we have an equality of spending in all our suburbs.
But $36 million has now been earmarked for coastal revitalisation, the Bathers Way and the Anzac Memorial Walk. Councillor Jason Dunn says they're great projects, but shouldn't come at the expense of Newcastle's growing outer suburbs.
The feedback I'm getting is that it is difficult for people to see all this money being spent on the coastline and in the city when some pretty basic services and infrastructure is lacking out here in the western suburbs.
On his wish list, a larger playground at Wallsend's Federal Park and a much-needed upgrade of Minmai Road.
Anderson Drive at Taro is quite frankly disgraceful. There's been almost no money spent on flood mitigation in the Wallsend CBD.
And most of his ward doesn't have the luxury of a footpath.
I think it's about time we turned our attention a little further west.
I think it's a good thing that we're making those upgrade works along the coastline, but I've got concerns that maybe the outer suburbs are missing out, especially in those basics of footpaths and shared cycleways.
The Lord Mayor argues the Bathers Way attracts ratepayers from across the area and says Blackbutt Reserve is also being upgraded. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
It's been a Metford icon for 80 years, but as the signs say, there's nothing sweet about the confectionery factory anymore. Last Friday, these workers found out the New Zealand-based owner was shutting up shop immediately after only taking over 21 months ago, with the general manager saying the business was no longer solvent.
No pay, got no pay at all. Just found out we've got no super entitlements, haven't been paid since March.
Today, Brisbane-based liquidators, Pilot Accountants, came in to assess the situation, and after spending hours out the front demanding answers, workers finally got some. But it wasn't what they wanted to hear. In a letter from the liquidators, they were informed there are currently insufficient funds in the administration for distribution to employees.
We're looking at the monies that are owed to the employees for their wages, etc. What we'll be doing is going through the books, investigating what's occurred and dealing with the assets, such as selling the stock.
3 employees have been offered roles with the company in New Zealand, but that's little comfort to the 33 others without a job.
We just wish that we'd had some warning, redundancy package, anything, even some help with resumes, just, anything, not just booted out.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
Many of the Hunters' schools are within walking distance of a retailer who sells tobacco. It's something the Cancer Council wants to see changed and is the focus of its Saving Life campaign.
Newcastle, Lake Macquarie, Cessnock and Port Stephens electorates have significantly more tobacco retailers per capita than other electorates in New South Wales.
In the Cessnock electorate, there are 133 cigarette retailers. There are 117 in Newcastle, while in Lake Macquarie there are 130. In the Hunter, New England, almost 1 in 5 people over the age of 16 are smokers, and the number of people dying of smoke-related illnesses is 12% higher than the state average. Cancer survivor James Garlick says while the number of teen smokers is dropping, cigarettes are still too easily accessible.
When I returned to school after about a year, I discovered that a few of my friends and peers had taken up smoking, which was really shocking to me.
Swansea High Principal Robin Leggett has welcomed the move but says current programs are working.
There's legislation, there's restriction of supply and there's education. So whatever those three prongs continue to push, hopefully it'll continue to see the number of kids smoking reduce.
A sentiment echoed by the Health Minister. Lauren Kelly, NBN News.
After a few photos to mark the occasion and a final countdown, it was time to walk through the gates for the first time. Today, St Aloysius, an $8 million Catholic school, welcomed 224 students. Principal Suzanne Fern says there'll be a big focus on 21st century learning, something the facilities reflect.
We'll be focusing on the children's individual needs as much as possible and really trying to work on developing them as a learner, teaching them the different aspects of learning.
It's drawn children from 31 other schools, with most coming from Chisholm and Thornton.
So a big focus starting from today is building culture and building community.
Mums and dads helped students settle in. Then it was time to get down to business, most eager to find their place in a brand new school.
I'm looking forward to all the different changes and how it's going to be 21st learning with the big screens and everything.
Learning and playing with other kids.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
Following last week's clean-out of players and coaches, the Jets had a vastly different look at training today. There was a blast from the past in the form of assistant coach Mark Jones. He worked with Gary Van Egmond and Branko Kalina. Now he's back to try and salvage what's left of this season. Jones was joined by new keeper coach Jess Van Stratton, as well as a handful of players trialling for a place on the roster, including former Wanderer Kwabena Apia. Daniel Mullen is the only confirmed signing after he cut ties with Western Sydney. Despite the recent off-field dramas in Newcastle, he's happy to be here.
Whatever has happened in the past that's in the past. I've come here with a clean slate and like I said, the 2 sessions that I've had, it's been positive.
Mullen worked with coach Phil Stubbins earlier in his career.
He was a big part of why I came here, and I've been here, I've played against the Jets before, I've seen the facilities, the fans and that, and it's impressed me in the past. So the whole package was good. It was ideal for me at this moment in my career.
Owner Nathan Tinkler also chimed in.
Yeah, he just said welcome to the club. It was actually I was quite impressed with that. He didn't have to call me, but yeah, he just said welcome to the club. It's good to have you.
Barrier trials don't normally draw much of a crowd, but a reigning Melbourne Cup winner is a rare sight at beautiful Broadmeadow.
I think it's good for racing in Newcastle to have a high-profile horse. I just hope he can live up to everyone's expectations.
Bit nervous?
No, not really.
Jockey Hugh Bowman travelled from Sydney for the ride on Protectionist over 1,200 metres. The German stayer was back in the pack early but found room out wide and cruised home to be first past the post.
He done everything we asked of him. He showed a good turn of foot at the top of the straight, and we just give him an easy time the last 100 metres. But he's still a good month from a first up run, but he's on track.
If all goes according to plan, Lee says Protectionist will resume racing in the Peter Young Stakes over 2,800 at Caulfield on February 28.
Now it just depends how he's going to react at the shorter distances that he's going to race over this preparation. He's a genuine 2-miler, but there's not them type of races programmed for him in the autumn. But he's a quality horse and he'll measure up whatever we run him in.
Stablemate Lucia Valentina wasn't as impressive in her trial, but Lee's was still happy with the run. She'll race in 2 weeks, with the long-term goal being the Queen Elizabeth Stakes. The appearance of the high-profile runners another boost for the NJC, which is currently upgrading its secondary racing surface.
We're now starting to lay the turf on it, and we've probably got to around about 25% of the track laid now. And this track is different to the old one. It's got a camber on it. It's also a 20-metre wide track.
The replacement of the course proper is expected to start after the Spring Carnival in September.
Valuable on-the-job training. 18-year-old John Moorcroft is one of the lucky ones, landing an apprenticeship in painting and decorating. It means his TAFE fees are covered, with the course cost recently jumping almost $500 to $2,000.
Would you have been able to pay those fees without an apprenticeship?
With the help of mum and dad, yeah, probably, but it'd be pretty hard.
A second-generation painter, Todd Lantry, prides himself on employing apprentices, but he knows others who simply can't afford to.
If they keep putting TAFE fees up, small businesses like myself won't be able to afford to put them on, and the quality in the building trade will drop and we won't have apprentices.
State Opposition Leader Luke Foley hit Hunter TAFE's Maitland campus today to unveil Labor's $100 million plan to overhaul the educator statewide. It includes abolishing the Smart and Skilled privatisation program while slashing student fees.
We'll guarantee TAFE 70% of the market share in this state.
The proposal has been slammed by the Education Minister, saying it would cost at least $414 million more than what's currently being spent. The government responded with its own plan, $48 million to ensure 200,000 disadvantaged young people receive free access to subsidised courses. Labor claims that's just dressing up an existing policy.
Mike Baird's policy puts lipstick on a pig.
Emma Murphy, NBN News.
Dr. Fiona Van Leeuwen is among 70 members of the new Hunter General Practitioners Association.
With the Medicare Local becoming the primary health network next year in July, we think it's really important that there's an appropriate, consistent GP voice locally.
Last December, the federal government backed away from charging patients an extra $7 GP fee, but it still plans to introduce a $5 rebate cut for most visits from July. Dr. Van Leeuwen says our health system is currently among the world's best.
But we do think that there are many opportunities to improve, efficiency in particular, to maintain equity of access for our patients and high quality care, which is what we're used to and what our patients deserve.
People already think that the GP tax is a matter of law and has already been implemented, and they have seen an absolute plummeting of people presenting in their general practice.
Pensioners were among those at a Save Medicare rally today. Cessnock's Fred Krausett has just spent 32 days in the US looking at its health system.
There's 17,000 people die in the United States each year because of lack of medication. There is 45% of the population of the United States that don't go to medical services.
He doesn't want that repeated here.
We want a universal health that gives equality to all people in Australia, not selectees on a private health fund.
We have wetlands that come across private land, public land, and they're all linked. The water moves between them, the birds or the frogs or the fish move between them.
Shorebirds are declining dramatically around the world, so these sorts of habitats are really important for them.
After issuing a formal notice to Nathan Tinkler, today the FFA boss looked to stay on the front foot.
We've certainly put them on notice that they need to fix their problems quickly.
The governing body says terms and conditions haven't been met, including clearing debts and providing sufficient club infrastructure. This despite constant assurances from the owner himself.
These are things that I've come into the club, become aware of, and we set about fixing them.
He's given us assurances that he wants to fix the problems, but we need to see action, not words at this point.
Late this afternoon, the Jets issued a statement saying the FFA today held another round of talks with Nathan Tinkler and received assurances about his intention to recapitalise the club and comprehensively address urgent issues in its operation. Reports Scottish Premier League giant Dundee United remains keen to buy the franchise are another source of frustration for David Gallop.
There have been prospective purchases around the club, but at this stage the current owner has indicated that the club's not for sale. So this is a decision for him and something only that he can decide at this point.
And if you thought the whole situation couldn't get any stranger, the Jets trained this morning for Friday's game against Brisbane just 20 metres from some of their sacked teammates. Those players have been advised by the PFA to train on as they await a revised termination offer from the club. Michael Kane, NBN News.
I need to start playing games, and hopefully if I start playing games then I can get back into that squad.
There were plenty of nerves at Surfest last year as James McMorland took on Joel Parkinson. McMorland failed to survive the heat, while Parko himself barely scraped through. This time around, McMorland holds no fear of a potential rematch.
Anyone can really win in the QS. There's so many good surfers that come down to Surfest for it, and I know what I have to do and to try and make a few heats, and yeah, hopefully I can beat him maybe.
Having won his second straight Open Men's wildcard, McMorland will take plenty of confidence into the Pro Junior, which starts on February 13. The 19-year-old knows he's got plenty of work to do.
Before the Pro Junior, I'll definitely drive up from Cays Beach to Merewether and get a few surfs in to get used to the bank.
Now entering his last year on the Pro Junior circuit, McMorland is hoping a strong showing at Surfest will be the start of his journey towards the professional ranks.
It's extremely hard to, make a career out of surfing. There's so many good surfers, and if you speak to anyone who does surfing on the QS or even the Pro Junior, any heat could be a final.
The State Health Minister on the defensive.
The idea is that the acute services from Maitland will move to the new hospital. That's not new news.
But Maitland locals say the move and the possibility of the hospital closing was ruled out by Gillian Skinner in August 2013.
We have no intention of closing surrounding hospitals, neither Maitland nor Cessnock or Curry nor Singleton.
The first sign of a change came last month when a fact sheet issued by the government claimed there's a possibility the current hospital could be sold.
To not operate an emergency department in both locations is a danger. It puts people at risk in the west of Maitland, and it's not what the people of Maitland were expecting.
The acute care decision has shocked the Nurses and Midwives Association.
I guess it would be a surprise to most of the nurses and midwives that this news is on the table now.
I think it would be a disservice to the community to shut this one.
They need Maitland Hospital to stay here.
Labor is now promising to keep the existing hospital open. The party spent $10 million upgrading the emergency department back in 2011.
Gillian Skinner, the Health Minister and the Premier did promise that they were going to keep the hospital open. They have gone back on that promise.
The commitment of a new hospital for Maitland was listed by the Premier as one of retiring MP Robin Parker's greatest achievements. Today, she refused to comment. Emma Murphy, NBN News.
Mining versus agriculture. The Upper Hunter's most important industries are often at loggerheads, but a $300,000 state government grant into whether remediated mine sites can be turned into productive pastures could change that.
What I'm excited about with these trials is to see exactly how productive they are once the land has been rehabilitated, or what do we need to do to make the soil more nutritionally valuable, because we can add product to soil to make it more nutritional.
10 Angus steers will spend the next 4 years grazing along this parcel of remediated land at Coal and Allied's HVO site in Singleton. Their health will be compared to another group of animals living on nearby land untouched by mining, and the results scrutinised. Testing will be carried out every 6 to 12 weeks, both on the soil and pasture composition as well as the cattle themselves. They'll be subjected to blood tests and have their overall conditions assessed. The government says it wants to be able to provide graziers with real and useful data to help ease farmers' fears about the Hunter's mining industry.
It's fair to say that people have had concerns over a number of years. And I think this is an opportunity for the mining companies themselves and farmers to showcase exactly how coexistence can occur.
Madeline McKell, NBN News.
Ivana Erlich-Senicic is one of the lucky ones.
I started getting light flashes in front of my eyes, and I went to my boss and I said that I wasn't feeling well and I wasn't right to drive. He drove me to the emergency department, and that's where I collapsed and had a stroke.
While the 32-year-old was in the right place at the right time, others may not be so fortunate. That's where the Hunter Medical Research Institute hopes the stroke finder will make a difference.
For a lot of patients that in reality never ever stand a chance to get to any hospital, this will be a game-changing situation.
The Swedish-designed helmet uses microwave technology similar to that of a mobile phone to scan a patient's brain. Doctors then use that information to determine the type of stroke and what treatment to administer, saving time on current scanning processes and potentially lives. John Hunter Hospital will be the first in the world to test the device in real-life scenarios, beginning later this year.
The initial phase is to validate this helmet independently and use our technology, our advanced imaging technology, to really see how good this helmet is.
If the trial here at John Hunter Hospital is successful, the next stage will be to roll out the devices in ambulances across the region and then, hopefully, across the state. Amanda Douglas, NBN News.
I'm here as the head coach of the Newcastle Jets. We made some bold decisions and we're moving forward. I think we're moving forward together.
Fronting the media for the first time since last week's mass sackings, one of the two men at the centre of the jet storm.
You've got rid of some players, you've brought some in. When can Phil Stubbins be judged?
Very good question. It's been a sweeping statement in what we've done. And look, in terms of the time frame, I would say give us to this point next year.
But rewind a few months ago, and Phil Stubbins was backing players he'd put in place.
I think we've got a real balance about our squad that once everyone becomes available to be up for selection, you'll see that the Newcastle Jets are capable of beating any team in this competition.
Now the Jets have only won one game in 15 starts, and Stubbins remains as coach following a review he himself was part of.
Through review, not only from myself, but more so the chairman, and going through everything that he needed to go through in terms of providing some insight and getting a good landscape of what the club was, decided to go in a way that he has. There's sometimes when you don't get it right, and I'll put my hand up there. We've certainly had a couple of things that could have gone the other way and hopefully worked out in a better light for the club and for myself, but it hasn't been.
Have you put your hand up?
I just have done.
Meanwhile, the Jets owner has attacked the game's governing body, claiming the FFA is holding talks with Scottish giant Dundee United about a Jets takeover. It's pretty clear that FFA and Dundee United are conspiring to kick me out of the game. All this as F3 rivals the Mariners announced their own European deal, a development partnership with EPL powerhouse Everton. Michael Kane, NBN News.
And it's got to sit there for a couple of days because our permits don't allow us to transport the boat until sort of, I think it's Tuesday night.
Absolutely, we have a high wire act, we have a strap act, we have comedians, we have musicians.
For every single patient added to a nurse's workload, there is a 7% increase in mortality. This is unfair on the people of Muswellbrook and in regional Australia.
One bypass, two different sides to the funding story. Country Labor candidate Martin Rush claims the previous federal government allocated $10 million for detailed planning, and the Liberals haven't spent it.
18 months later, National Party Federal Roads Minister, National Party State Roads Minister can't come to an agreement as to how that money should be spent.
Something he says he'd change if elected, but the state's road minister argues the money never existed, saying in the lead up to the federal election, the former minister went on a frenzied spending spree, handing out money that didn't exist. Nationals candidate Michael Johnson has also committed to deliver if he wins the state seat.
It's an absolute highest priority, and I suspect the latest round of discussions on this from Labor is just another pie in the sky, hollow promise.
Duncan needs to explain why then it appears in his budget. It appears in the state budget for last financial year and the financial year before.
At the moment, all there is a proposed 8.8 kilometre route on the Roads and Maritime Services website, which bypasses Muswellbrook to the east. A bypass would have significant benefits for the Muswellbrook Shire. Trucks would no longer use the main street, which would reduce traffic noise and create a more pedestrian-friendly environment. Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
It's the hottest real estate in Newcastle. According to the New South Wales Property Council, the demand for premium city office space is at a record high.
Vacancy rates have crashed to below 3%, in fact they're 2.7%. That's absolutely unprecedented for Newcastle.
Businesses, it seems, are making the most of the recent development boom. In the last 12 months, around 11,000 square metres of new floor space have become available, and 90% of that has already been snapped up. Generous incentives driving the out with the old, in with the new mentality.
It is a bit of a double-edged sword in some ways, because while vacancy rates are low, it means market conditions are very tight.
Why wouldn't you move out of B grade into A grade if the incentives are there?
Rain and Horn's commercial director Stephen Dick says the increase in new office space means slightly older buildings, like this one on Hunter Street, are finding it hard to find new businesses to fill the void. The region's industrial estates are facing a similar situation, with vacancy rates the highest they've been in 3 years.
We're losing jobs in this region, and there is a shift. There is a shift away from manufacturing, and the mines are becoming more and more competitive.
And with residential prices skyrocketing, home buyers are being urged to be wary.
We're a different marketplace and people should be cautious.
Amanda Douglas, NBN News.
That sky behind me is just about perfect for a paragliding competition. Just about all of the pilots, about 200-300 kilometres that way to the west. But what is this sport all about? Let's take a closer look.
The day begins on launch, where it gets very busy with hundreds of pilots trying to take off. Once in the air, the searches are thermals, which take you high into the heavens and eventually become clouds. There's just something incredibly surreal about having a cloud form around you. From there, it's a downwind glide looking for the next invisible ride, and the views can be spectacular. And when the flying comes to an end, a whole new adventure begins. How to get home.
So as you can see from that vision, I get a bird's eye view of the weather across the region, not just here in the northwest, but looking over those beautiful mountains and towards the coast. I'll be back a little later with a closer look at all of your local weather details.
For a Hunter-bred footballer, captaining the Jets is an honour, but Taylor Regan doesn't want people getting carried away with his promotion.
My understanding is it's just for this weekend, and we go 1 week at a time at the moment until we find out more clearer what's happening.
In a move rarely seen in sport, Regan goes from not playing last round to acting skipper in a squad that contains several new faces. Despite the official club line that the contracts of Griffiths, Carney, Zaleski, Yelins and Madashi have been terminated, they're simply listed as omitted. Geronimo definitely won't play after leaving the club by mutual consent last night, 6 months after he was brought in by coach Phil Stubbins. The acting skipper says he'll be happy to simply get back to playing football.
Us boys have to go out there and play for the supporters. You know, we've arguably let them down for 4 seasons now and going on a 5th unless we start to really do something drastic.
He's likely to partner new signing Daniel Mullen in defence.
Me and him have sort of struck up a combination over the last few days, and I'm confident that, you know, hopefully we can keep Brisbane at bay and get a result in front of the home crowd.
A section of that crowd is planning to wear the Jets' traditional gold, showing its support for the players and frustration with club management.
For a very young dog, he's done a great job to get through to this race. It's a very prestigious race, a Group 1 race, and age restricted, but the boxers sort of play a big part. Mitch, and he drew bad, which is not ideal, but no, nice young pup on the rise. Box 6 ain't great, but we'll present them nice and fit and healthy and sound, and they'll do their best, mate.
"17-year-old Alex Sagente dominated the bull riding championships last year, and he says he's pumped to be back in Newcastle.
It's a really nice place. I always have a lot of fun here, and I really like this bowl too. So, every year it makes for some good skating.
To defend his title, he'll have to beat some of the world's best skaters, with Brazilians Murilo Perez and Felipe Foquinho expected to provide tough opposition. But when tackling the Bar Beach Bowl, confidence is key.
Are you going to smash it?
Yeah, I hope I'll smash it, that'd be cool. Pretty keen.
Pint-sized local Poppy Olsen was also practicing her moves today. The 14-year-olds won the girls' category 2 out of the last 3 years and is keen for another crown.
I'm going to try. There's a lot of really good girl skaters coming and there's a lot of up-and-coming girl skaters. It's going to be hard, but I'm going to try and place, but it'll still be really fun.
Now, in its 4th year, it's fair to say the event has become embraced by the city. Madeline McKell, NBN News.